CBS News legal analyst Lisa Bloom joins us this morning from Los Angeles. Lisa, good to see you.
Good morning.
So police are investigating at this point, although it happened, as we understand it, months ago. What kind of legal mess is Mel Gibson in right now?
Well, I think he's in a lot of trouble if the investigation reveals any incidents of domestic violence. It's true that these incidents are 6 months old, and if his ex-girlfriend is the complaining witness, she'll have to answer questions as to why it took her 6 months to come forward. On the other hand, if she has the tape, as some websites claim, of him attacking her, assaulting her, beating her, even hurling verbal epithets at her that are as bad as they sound, then he's in a heap of trouble. The tape, I think, is going to be critical in this investigation.
And what are the chances that we'll ever hear that tape?
Well, if this case goes to trial, certainly that would come out at trial. That's unlikely. 95% of cases settle before trial, and I think Mel Gibson would have a lot of incentive to make sure this case is resolved without those tapes ever being made public. You know, California is a two-party state, Erica, and that means that both parties to a conversation need to consent to it being taped in the first place. On the other hand, there's a crime exception, which means that if Oksana Grigorieva felt that she was about to become the victim of a crime, if, for example, he was making death threats to her, as she has contended, then she could get around that, and these tapes could be legal. So I think they're both in for a major legal argument about the tapes, about their admissibility, and that's going to be the center of the case legally.
There's also their daughter, Lucia, who is really involved here because they were involved in this custody battle. There have been some reports that they had worked it out on their own, come to an agreement. What could all of this do to any sort of agreement that had been there prior?
Well, the question is, if he's violent to the mother, is he violent to the child? And generally the courts say no to that. He can be a fit father even if he is abusive to the mother. There's no allegations that he's been abusive in any way to his little daughter. The parties have worked out, reportedly, a custody agreement between them. I think that would remain in place absent any new evidence about his inappropriate conduct towards the baby, and we just don't have any evidence of that now.
Right. There are, and Bill referred to this in his piece, that incident, of course, famous incident in 2006, which happened with police officers when he went on an anti-Semitic tirade. When you take into account these past actions, will those come into play as showing some sort of a history for him, and how does that figure in?
Probably wouldn't come into play in this case. It's remote in time. It's 4 years ago, and it's not as to her. I think there's plenty in this case involving his allegedly abusive allegations as to her that would come in. I mean, their entire relationship, their course of conduct, everything that he said to her, any incidents of abuse, and of course those tapes. If there's a half an hour of tapes, if there's more than that, that's all going to be coming in, and the court's going to comb over that very carefully.
And do you think that there is something more here? Is this why we're starting to hear about it now? Perhaps that the police know that we don't know at this point?
That's possible, Erica. You know, so much of what goes on in these big Hollywood cases is under wraps and behind closed doors, worked out with attorneys. We know that Oksana Grigorieva has been visiting her attorney's office frequently in the last few days. We know that there was a custody agreement worked out in May. I would assume some of this was resolved then. So the question is, why now? Why is this coming out now? Is it because some news organizations got a hold of the tapes and that caused the police to want to investigate on their own, as they're required to do if they have a credible allegation of domestic violence, or did she come forward?
And there's no way to stop it, even if in fact something had been worked out. Once the investigation is in the works, they can't say, you know what, we worked it out, we're good.
That's right, Erica. You can't have a civil agreement to get around a criminal act, although many times people try to do that. The police are empowered to investigate this on their own, even if the parties have resolved it on their own civilly.
Lisa Bloom, always good to have you with us. Thanks.
Thanks, Erica.
A lot happens early on The Early Show, weekday mornings on CBS.